that USDA or that TDA has granted for the TFAP signature. We sent out an email a couple of weeks ago extending that to October 31. So hopefully you all received that. And then just as a clarification, that short intake form that we have released, it existed prior to COVID, but it's what we're using during COVID for the signature waiver that we're providing. So that short intake form that you all have been utilizing that doesn't require that signature piece, that goes with this waiver. So as long as we are extending this waiver, you are able to utilize that form in conjunction with it. So does anybody have any questions concerning the signature waiver and the short form? Okay, I figured you all, that was pretty straightforward. You all worked with it, know what it is. So as a reminder, TFAP and CSFP agreements are due this month. So for renewal, also for TFAP, we did release a new permanent agreement. Biggest change is that we separated it out from the National School Lunch permanent, or the food distribution for National School Lunch permanent agreement that never made any sense. And then also through some observations from our last ME, we added some clarifying detail in there. Things that were already existing in the handbook, but we felt that they felt would be a good idea to put into that permanent agreement, things that you all are already doing. So that permanent agreement is out there as well to submit when you submit your TFAP renewal documentation. But no substantial updates were put into the new agreement. It was really just clarifying things that were already required through the handbook. Any questions about that? Okay. And if you have any questions after y'all look at it, please feel free to give us a call if you need any further clarification on that. The FNS 191 report, that is due at the end of this month as well. There are 3 of you that got an extension to September 3rd because you have the retroactive distribution waiver for CSFP. But for everybody else, August 28th is the due date for your FNS 191 reporting information. On that note, just because I've mentioned it, is that we are going to be reaching out in terms of the CSFP retroactive distribution waiver that we currently have approved. That is a USDA flexibility that they're calling it. And so we are reaching out to find out if that is still a waiver that is necessary. And then to get some information regarding the particulars around why the waiver is needed. As a reminder, that waiver allows you to retroactively distribute a CSFP food package if a site was closed due to COVID-19 the prior month. So we currently have that waiver active, and it allows for those 3 food banks that are approved to do so, it allows them to distribute a July food package in August under those circumstances that participant site was closed the month prior. So, so again, we'll be reaching out to the contacts for each of the food banks to discuss the necessity for continuing that waiver and any data points that we will need around that. And then finally, just giving you another update on the TFAP ordering pilot. So per the last meeting, many of you had asked us to kind of give you a synopsis of what that pilot would be. I will say that we just sort of finished it, and I'm reviewing the synopsis before we throw it out there to you to take a look at, and let the executive team kind of look at what that synopsis is before we distribute it. But again, in general, it's just going to try to paint the picture of the, kind of what the structure of the pilot would look like. We're still sort of working on timeframes and project teams, but just to give you an overview of what the pilot is going to do, what the goals are, what we've identified as a measure, or what we're trying to identify as a measure of success. Although you all will have, since this is a request from you guys, this is something you guys will also have some input on in terms of those that are on participating in the pilot. What is that measure of success, and how are we going to measure it to determine, if once the pilot is said and done and we evaluate the data, is this something we move forward and roll out to everybody? So I just wanted to give you that update that it's Matt McElhaney has gotten the whole synopsis sort of typed up. I'm reviewing it, so you should be getting that shortly. I think we had asked last time if we should hold this off until January. We might need to hold it off that far anyway, just out of necessity of being able to get all of our ducks in the row and get all of the planning pieces done before we roll this out. We want to make sure it's methodical, that we're not trying to push something out too quickly. So please still provide us that feedback of when piloting a new system rollout would be good for you guys. We still want to make sure we're respecting the fact that you guys still have a lot going on. But we also know that we're trying to balance that with, this is something that you guys desire, and we want to make sure that we take a good look at this and really assess, and not put this off on the back burner when this is something that you all, feel like you need. So any questions about that? All right. And then I'm just going to throw in an ad hoc agenda topic. Sorry, ladies that did the agenda. So we have a lot of cancellations happening on the household side. I know that you guys are getting a lot of emails of this, USDA didn't get a bid on this. Nobody bid on it. It looks like they're losing out a lot to the commercial business in the procurement world. So we are assessing that and looking at that. If you guys have some feedback that you could send to me in terms of, what you guys are looking at in terms of impact, so that we can start assessing that and, start having some conversations. But I do recognize and understand that there's just a lot. I think I've gotten 3 emails a week about this didn't get purchased because they couldn't get a vendor to bid on it. So just please keep an open dialogue with me. You can email that to me directly, just to say, hey, this is where we are with our inventories. We are monitoring, CSFP very closely because we do that ordering based on your inventory levels. But on the TFAP side, really, we need that information from you guys, since you guys really hold the inventory records of what you have in your warehouses and what you're projecting for the future. Again, if you go back and talk to your teams and assess sort of what the future looks like in your inbound shipments, please let us know those bullet points. So this is what our future looks like. And with that, that's all I have. Do we have any other? I'm going to open up any other questions about any of the things I talked about.
Did Matt have anything else to add, Jackie, or did you get it all covered? He indicated update. Matt, do you have an update you want to provide?
Yeah, actually, I can provide an ordering update and kind of touch upon what Jackie was referring to with cancellations. So I was flowing with some numbers, and what I actually did was I was comparing August through December timeframe from last year in 2019 compared to this year. And looking at those numbers, we are actually floating a cancellation rate that's under what we had in 2019. That probably doesn't make it any better in terms of the perspective. Right now we're floating at about an 8.65% in all of our sales orders being canceled. One thing in perspective to keep in mind, though, is I also compared the total number of cases that we have ordered in those 2 time periods. And in 2020, we have close to double the amount of product that we're going to be bringing in from August through December. In 2019, we brought in at about 3.5 million cases of total product for TFAP. this is including trade mitigation. And in 2020, with the inclusion of CARES and FFCRA, we still have on order about a little under 7 million cases, which means that we've essentially doubled the amount of product that you guys are expecting to receive in August and December this year compared to last year. So while the cancellations are there and we are seeing a lot of it come through, it's actually still a little bit on par, and in fact a little under than what we experienced last year at this time. And the numbers actually kind of surprised me when I saw that, but I think that just goes to show the sheer number of cases and orders that we have put in light of the additional funding we received from those two programs. In a bit of positive news, currently right now your ordering team is busy with fulfilling TFAP bonus offerings USDA has recently made. These were available for October 2020 through March 2021 delivery periods. And they run the gamut in terms of the products that are being offered. You've got some fresh produce, you've got some poultry and fish, some almonds, nuts, pistachios, a little bit of dairy. So it's kind of running the gamut of the different types of food products they're offering. So anytime we get additional offerings, it's always of course good news, because you know, a good portion of that ends up going through and becoming purchased from USDA. And the last bit of update I just wanted to provide you all is, I think at last time we spoke, we were looking at around $18.5 million that we were going to roll over into 2021. With those recent cancellations we have been receiving, that's kind of pushed it back up now to closer to $20.5 million that we're going to roll over, unless USDA comes up with some emergency offerings and solicitations for the end of the calendar year. So that was basically what I had to provide for the ordering update. And if you all have any questions, feel free to ask or put that in the chat pane. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. I like the tad bit of good news in that report. So that's pretty much our agenda items for today. The only other thing we wanted to talk about was the frequency of these meetings. We were meeting a lot more frequent when there was a lot going on and a lot changing, but now that things have kind of gotten back to a sense of not a new normal, but into its own groove, I was wondering if everyone feels like we still need to meet every other week. If you want to cut these meetings back to once a month, just what is your desire at this point in terms of frequency? You can put it in the chat or you can just chime in.
Hi, Lena. I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute fast enough. It's Nicole. Matt, we are seeing a whole Idaho state of potatoes, and I'm just wondering if, as a state, if we can do some processing with those.
So I can speak to that, Nicole. Oh, Matt, you're on mute.
Yeah.
So you're talking about further processing, having those potatoes converted to French fries or some other product that you would distribute to the clients, right?
Yes.
And is the food bank wanting to absorb the processing cost, or how do you envision that working?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak, and I kind of want to open it up to other food banks,
Sure.
as this is something across the state we're seeing with the fresh potatoes, and with the COVID precautions, and, you know, even dumping the 10-pound bag of potatoes in people's cars after a while may be monotonous. And so I'm just wondering, we were thinking about looking to process, but it would make sense if we as a state thought about that and what costs would be associated. I don't want to speak for other food banks, but I think for our food bank, we think the investment in the processing would be amenable. We don't have any major problem with that, as long as it's not just as much as the freight or something. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Is there other interest in processing? And then I can kind of tell you what that would mean.
Hey, this is Eric. Answer to the first question, I think monthly would work. And You know, investigating into further processing, it just seemed to be so price prohibitive that I don't think for us in San Antonio, it would make sense to do the further processing.
Okay. Well, why don't I just tell you a little bit what would be required? You certainly are able to further process any of the items that come from USDA. Potatoes would be one. It would involve a procurement process to determine who would be the awarded vendor who would convert your potatoes into a litany of products that would be available. So whether it's tater tots or French fries or whatever you would decide, but we would have to have a procurement process conducted. What might be helpful, Nicole, to help you gauge interest a little bit better is we work with the co-op coordinators from throughout the state. We can possibly get some pricing from them on what they're paying for processed potato products. So you can see what that fee would look like and then determine if that looks reasonable or not to you.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thank you,
Okay.
Lena.
Okay, so we will, and I don't know when the next meeting with the co-ops is, but between now and then, we will try to get at least some pricing so you can have a ballpark. That doesn't mean that's what your bid's going to come back, but in this market, but at least you'll have an idea and determine if it's reasonable.
Great, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Lena, this is Susan in El Paso. We would love to have as many 10-pound bags of potatoes as we can get if there's surplus somewhere.
Okay, and that would be Matt, Jackie.
So that, any opportunity for any additional food we have, we do send that out to all of the food banks. And then within that communication with each food bank, we do ask, who can take more, how much more, who can't take their full fair share. If not, how much do you want? And then we can figure out what's left over. And then we do offer out any surplus to the food banks at that time. So any surplus we have right now, I don't know that there's really a surplus anywhere. But if there's a specific item, Susan, that you are like, we're really low on this, and if we need it, in general, if you're just saying any opportunity for more food, you guys need it, yes, that's built into our process of making sure that any offerings that are brought into Texas are utilized to the fullest capacity that you guys can take.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I just thought the earlier conversation was indicating that there were 10-pound bags of potatoes that were looking for homes, and that we might have to go to the extra effort of processing them because there wasn't a market or a home for them for 10-pound bags. And I just wanted to point out, if there were 10-pound bags of potatoes out there, we would be delighted to take them as they are rather than having to go to the effort of processing them in some way.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yes, any of the food banks on the call, if you have any surpluses, Susan can take those off your hands.
Okay, from the consensus, it looks like everyone is good with going monthly. And then if there's something going on or we're hearing of some new development from USDA, then we might convene a meeting in between just for urgency's sake. But we'll see if this works monthly. And if you all feel that it's too big of a gap, we can look at something different every 2 weeks or something a little bit different. But thank you so much for your feedback in the chat. And I agree with Brad. It's been great to have these meetings more frequently and kind of walk a little bit more in sync to better support you, which is what our goal is to do. So we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate all that you're continuing to do, and feel free to reach out to us anytime if you need assistance. And then I'll be following up with Nicole about her request. Trisha, that's a good idea, a monthly meeting and maybe a bi-weekly update email. I think that's a great idea. Okay. Sure. All right, everyone. Thanks for your time. We're going to give you some of it back today, and we'll talk to you in a few weeks. Have a great day.